our report. I know, Dante, you're typically before 5, and we're well after 5. Do you want to come and offer that? Thank you.
Dante's coming up. Pride Parade is June 13th and 14th.
Thank you.
Last year was just me and Sonji. It was like my first day.
So let's talk about it later on in the agenda when we have next steps and final announcement time, but thank you for the date. Okay, hello, Dante.
Good evening. Don't have much, just a couple quick things. One, you may have seen the mayor's budget was presented yesterday, and our office got two things. One was a request that we had made regarding additional part-time staff person, which we did receive, so we'll be hiring a 0.6 time FTE after July 1. The second half of that is that there is a staff person that was funded for the COAB, and it was funded initially through ONI's office, just because that's where it was, that has been sitting. It's going to move and be housed within the Office of Equity and Human Rights on July 1. Not that we have any oversight over it, that's not the point, but it will be housed here for budgetary, bureaucratic reasons. We'll oversee just time and all those kinds of things. But because we have obviously OHR and Commission on Disability, and Judith in my office has been very connected with working with COAB and COCO as I have kind of recently, it just makes sense that it will be housed in OHR. So that's happening too. I'm glad you had a conversation about the budget in terms of the EZO, I guess is how you pronounce it. Because if it, timing is critical. As I said, mid-15th is the deadline for having everything in the system to be contracted for this fiscal year. As I recall, your budget numbers is about $21,000 left unspent. If it's not spent on this project and or by the middle of May, then I'm going to move a significant chunk of that to other areas within the program areas of OAHR. One, because I can't wait, and two, because it will help balance out some of the program areas in the office. Yes, ma'am.
I assume that the retreat costs for a facilitator and space are in that.
Yes, we're already working with Kenya.
Is it okay?
Yes, I think it is accounted for already. So, okay.
With that May 15th deadline, if we decide to kind of implement a sponsorship program and then we want to sponsor certain events using the funding for this fiscal year, would those have to be in by May 15th, or could those still go through June? So if we sponsor, like, let's say, yeah, or even the Glasgow House, is being passed along that event for a certain amount of money, would that still?
No, that's not a contract. So
Okay.
With that, did anyone end with that? Sorry, the Urco piece?
Africa House?
Yes, okay. Keep it. Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's not a contract, so that could be spent.
But that's something that would be paid for out of your budget.
Correct.
Do you already have an idea where you want to spend the money so not spend? Do you already have an idea where you want to go with the agencies? Are they still honoring like minority businesses, or and are we able to know that, or it's just
The money that's not spent this year?
Yeah, the money that's not, that we don't, the 18,000 or 21,000 that
Yeah.
if we don't spend, do you already have an idea of where you want to spend it and where you want to?
Well, it's not going to be spent outside. It's going to be reallocated in my office for programs that are working, like the Commission on Disability is upside down in some of its spending already because of lots of other translation work that it's had to do and things like that. And so some of that's where it would go. I would just reallocate it within the program areas.
we're probably gonna spend it if we have 19 allocated.
So if that works, well, there's that,
Retreat
and then there's also the retreat. So there are things that'll come up, but if this ESO project does not work, there will be a large amount that will go out, yeah.
Just as an FYI, I was all last week, I was in Philadelphia at a conference sponsored by Cities United, which is a program out of the White House that sponsors My Brother's Keeper and Black Male Achievement Initiative, and Cities United as well sponsors programs and work to reduce violence, specifically for communities of color, specifically for black men and boys and brown men and boys, and also how to reduce violence in community police relations among communities of color. And so there were lots of great workshops. Just one wonderful takeaway, there was a youth panel that was talking about a number of things, and one quote that resonated with me and will for a long time. This young woman said, "All those who complain about our generation forget who raised them." Drop the mic. I just thought that was phenomenal. But there was some really, really good conversation and feedback on how to assist in doing a number of things to reduce violence in communities of color, improve interactions with police communities, get police communities to improve themselves. A number of things. There were a number of police chiefs who were represented. There were about 60 cities represented in Philadelphia. Mayor of Philadelphia, Mayor Nutter, is doing a lot of work in that regard, and also had a reception where he just cordoned off all around City Hall and had food trucks and had a DJ and he was jamming and he was doing the wobble and he was jamming. So I just can't picture Mayor Hales in a line dance. So it was a wonderful event.
Does the mayor, like, obviously, I'm sure you brought it back, what you learned in Philadelphia, has he bitten on to chew off anything that you've given to him and said?
Yeah, I just got back Friday evening, so I haven't really talked to him about it specifically, but he knows the work that Mayor Nutter is doing in Philadelphia, because they're doing some phenomenal things, and he's got a little competitive spirit with Mayor Nutter, and so he's tried to take some of the programs specifically as it relates to re-engagement of returning folks from ex-offenders, from incarceration, and trying to promote training certification for them to re-engage in the workforce. So he's taken a number of Mayor Nutter's policies and really trying to implement those, so he knows quite well what's going on.
Can I ask, that's awesome. Thanks for going, and one of the things that we talked about in our executive committee meeting was with our call to recommend and lift up things that the city should be doing regarding human rights issues for the work that's happening from a BMA perspective. If there are also things that we should highlight and say, good on you for doing these things, or that you're doing, or that's happening here. If there are things that are major places to kind of celebrate or highlight that we can or should use. I know that Diana Nunez mentioned that. She and I had just a kind of conversation about when good things are happening. So if you're aware of these things, especially as it relates to BMA or these things, I'd love to be able to use our voice in whatever way to say, good job, and continue where we support, or
That would be really interesting to see in that simple bulleted list of some of the ideas that were tossed around, just so that's something that we can kind of think about.
Well, and CJ probably is, he hosts meetings, and there's all kinds of stuff that's occurring for folks to be engaged in.
And so there was a team of 6 of us that went from here. CJ went. CJ is the program manager for the Black Male Achievement Initiative. I went. Phil McFerrin from POIC went. A youth from POIC went, and Assistant Chief Modica went. And Ralph Evans, who's a consultant, but he's done HR and a number of things set on police commissions and other things, also went. So there were numbers, so we could attend a wide variety or as many of the sessions as possible. So we're going to come back together and kind of debrief that as an entity and get some of those things that we have. I have I can send it out. There was a PowerPoint that was presented in one session that I went to. There were two actually. One was on restorative,
Justice?
justice. Okay, yeah, I was right. And usually you think of that in terms of school and education. This was specific to the criminal justice system, and she's in Oakland. And she has put together this program that's been accepted and is doing restorative justice in felonies, which is unheard of. I mean, assaults, robberies, burglaries. She described doing one that was a rape. And she said sitting there with the victim and sitting there with the rapist and sitting there with the DA. She said the DA walked out and said, I never would have believed that you could do that. And so, just, I can send it out. Sujata was her name. I forget the name of the program that she runs, but it was just amazing descriptions of some of the work that she's done in that regard. And then there was another that described the intergenerational disadvantage specific to black and brown boys in relation to girls, whereas a lot of programs focus on, I mean, the idea was to demonstrate why there's a need to focus on boys specifically versus boys and girls of color. And he described, went down a list of several programs that demonstrated that when there's an all approach of boys and girls, that the girls end up doing better and boys, there's no change in the outcomes for boys. Versus a specifically approached program, targeted program for boys of color. Makes a difference, but otherwise, he could specifically add, he had data coming out of his ears that could demonstrate that kind of that universal approach does not positively impact boys the way it impacts girls. So it was really, really interesting.
It's probably important also to note that if we're just focusing on our brown and black boys and neglecting to speak on or do that federal data collection, the longest initiative around my brother's keeper, that probably, I mean, then there'll be no effect on black and brown women and girls. So I think that's, and then it's kind of missing in the conversation.
And I know there are larger conversations that have been happening via
African American policy.
the African American Policy Forum has been doing a lot around what does it mean to totally leave out women. So it's interesting to have that perspective. I haven't heard that before. But it's good for some critical thought and conversation to continue.
Because that's always the question is, what about women? And this data is very clear. That treating them equally doesn't mean the same as others.
I'd like to make just a soft recommendation that in the future, that you might consider inviting one of the HRC commissioners to attend a conference like that. I just think that could be valuable for the whole connection with the policy.
Well, I think some folks are going up to GRE.
Yeah.
Yes,
They're going for racial equity. About the same thing.
Yeah.
So what do you think we're lacking here for this, for you to be here for a few years, or maybe understating that, but what do you think we need? Like for the black and brown brothers here, and the black and brown sisters here, just in general, like we've always had a problem. Portland's very different, very unique, but you need to see it from a different perspective. So, and not to even put you on the spot, we can have this conversation over coffee, but you know, with all the mess that goes on inside of the city and outside of the city, what is one thing you think that could really speak to the body of like our inner community as opposed to like really need it most? You probably need to see you or need to see us all the time.
Coffee for sure, but one thing if you can't offer, because we're already here.
Yeah, no.
It's timing, so.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's, in some sense, it's collaboration, and not being quiet about the collaboration. I see, I spent almost 30 years in Denver, and for me, the demographics are almost the same. For Black, for Latino, for Native, Asians are larger here than in Denver, but demographics are almost the same. Denver's on its second Black mayor. Before that was a Latino mayor. There's been a state attorney general who was Latino elected statewide. It's not numbers, because we couldn't elect them. It's culture. But there's also a very, very active infrastructure of nonprofits that take no stuff and make it very clear this is what needs to change. And so this office got created because of that activism. And then it's kind of now silent. So how do we maintain that sense of outrage and urgency? I think that's what's missing, is that sense of pushing the urgency of this a lot of times. And the outrage. I don't know the best way to do that, but how do we push that culture change through our collaborative outrage and activism?
Thank you.